So, and I'm playing out the conversation by asking you questions, right? But this is a conversation you guys will be having. So you explain that now knows, okay, all right, that makes sense. I get it. I didn't make the connection between you attempting to teach something by doing that, right? So now I know. This is saying now I know, right? Now, based on the other very important piece that shared, which is the connection that how the reaction connects him to something, to a negative point of reference. Mm-hmm. Now the question becomes, because essentially what you're doing is you're expressing the need, you're expressing why the need's important, you're expressing how the need can be facilitated, and then now you guys are doing some level of explanation, clarification, and negotiation, right? So now it's like, okay, got it. Okay. All right. So we're getting some clarification now, right? As it relates to explanation, clarification, negotiation, we're getting some clarification. And sometimes you're going to have to go back and forth with the clarification piece because there's an active listening component, which I didn't have you guys do. But like, for example, the active listening component would be shared what the need is, why it's important to her, how the need can be facilitated. The active listening piece now is saying, okay, here's what I'm hearing you say. Then says what he just said. There are certain words that trigger this response in me, and it kind of puts me in the frame of mind with, an experience that was negative. Your first response, because here's the human nature first response is, well, that's not what I'm trying to do. Right? When you're having these kinds of conversations to ensure that they don't become arguments, your first response to after someone shares should be an active listening response, which is simply, so what I hear you saying is that there are certain words that I say that kind of send you down a different path and trigger this response in you. Right. And then like, words like such and such and such. So now let's say we've gone through that process enough and everybody understands the other. Now the negotiation piece of that is like this. Babe, I would love it if you just ask me, right? Because now you're reinforcing what you just said. Like, all right, I can do that. Piece of this would be, okay, let's say, because I'm human, let's say I forget. What are we going to do? And now this gives the opportunity to say, okay, babe, if I happen to forget, because I'm human, I will listen. First of all, I'm going to commit to attempting to do what you said every time. I'm going to commit to asking if I'm going to try to make sure I connect those dots. Let's say I don't. Because what I don't ever encourage people to do is make blanket promises. Because what we do as human beings is, if I say to you, I'm going to be at your house every morning at 7:02, and then the day after I say that, I'm there at 7:12, you're going to be like, this dude is whack. Like, he can't even keep his word. But I promised you something absolute. So if I say, okay, listen, I'm going to commit to getting there at 7:02 as consistently as I can, what can we put in place in case I can't make it at 7:02? And then you would be like, okay, well, can you call me 10 minutes ahead? Or can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? What's the contingency plan? Same thing here. If I forget to ask, here's what I would appreciate you do to bring it to my attention. Here's what I would appreciate you not do to bring it to my attention. And you've already discussed that, right? And then you guys, and I know sometimes it feels mechanical and frivolous to do this, but it saves you from having to go down the road of fussing or arguing about something, or saves you from, because we don't want a position where he's now balancing a negative point of reference with his current scenario. So that's kind of how you walk through that process and establish, okay, hey, if it's something, like, hey, if I forget, just come over and, just whatever it is you come up with, that is a gentle reminder, not something that is going to feel forceful, not something that's going to be categorized as a trigger. And you guys determine what that is. And that's why the active listening piece is so important, because it may not so much be your delivery as much as it is your word choice. So, and that's the thing with triggers. They're hairpin in that way. You will deliver something and the intent will not be malicious, but the words that are used in that delivery, the words themselves are triggers. So the trigger now, once it goes off, obliviates your intent, because it overshadows it in a way that allows your intent to be lost in translation. So that's why the first response, because typically the first response to that is going to be whatever responses that you have when you're triggered. So that's why making the first response an active listening response, you could say something, you have the best of intentions. It's like, okay, so what? And let me tell you how I do it. And I'm not saying you got to do it this way, but I'm telling you, if my wife was here, she'd tell you, she'd be like, listen, before I jump out the window on this, are you calling me selfish? And she's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. Right. So we avoid. See how we avoided something just now? I was honest enough to express that, hey, this is like, I'm about to jump out the window on this one right here. But before I do that, and that's what the active listening response helps to do, because it allows you to bypass what might be. Now, let's hope that your active listening response really can be clarified, and it's not, because some people be like, are you before I jump out the window, you calling me selfish? And the other person be like, heck yeah. I can't really, I can't save you in that regard. You know what I mean? It's gonna go left. But usually there's an opportunity to clarify and be like, no, I'm just explaining, trying to explain it in such a way that allows you to understand why it's important to me. And now that gives the opportunity to be like, oh, okay, I get it. So here's what I need you to do. Now you're going into the negotiation phase. Don't use the word selfish. Don't use the word, whatever it is, whatever those triggers are that would overshadow the intent. Right. So, but yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because those are great. Those are great learning opportunities to really craft some strategy around expression and intent versus impact, and how you can navigate that.